purpose. We can look at it that way. Christian Zionism, I want to go back because that's where we started on this.
I'm not going to let you off on this because you have said it 3 times that God...
Welcome back to the channel. Today, we've got Tucker Carlson and U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee going head-to-head on one of the most heated topics. And yes, you guessed it, it's Israel. Things get intense as they battle over the actual justification for Israel's borders and what that means for the rest of the Middle East. Huckabee thinks he's on solid ground using the Bible as a literal real estate deed for the region, but Tucker is about to expose exactly what that position means when you follow it to its logical conclusion. Let's get into it.
There have been people living in this land connected to that moment of history. So there is a historical connection that is unbroken.
You've said that, and I want to ask you what that means a little more specifically, if that's okay. But first, let me just say that you could say the same thing of Britons who've been there in their land longer.
Is anybody trying to tell the Brits they can't live there anymore?
No, what's happening is...
But they are saying that to the Jews.
Oh, okay. But I just wonder if you would extend the same sympathy or the same principle. You seem like this is... You think I'm trying to trap you? I'm not. I'm at all trying to trap you. It'd be as simple as saying native Britons have the same...
I got no problem with the native Brits having their land.
Having the right to their land.
But my point is, I don't know that there is a biblical connection for the Brits.
Okay.
But I would say...
So that's what it comes down to.
Take that off the table, and I think there's still a basis for the Jews having this little bitty strip of real estate. I'm
not even arguing with you. I'm just trying to, I'm just trying to understand what it is that you're saying, because it's not obvious to me, and maybe it's an IQ problem, but I'm having trouble understanding this. But let me just go back to just clarify one thing. You've brought up international law at least twice, maybe 3 times, as a basis for Israel's legitimacy. If Israel was out of compliance with international law, whatever that is, would it be less legitimate?
Depends on if the law and the way it's applied is legitimate. There are some applications of so-called international law that are not legitimate.
I agree.
Look at the ICC or the ICJ.
I agree.
Utterly ridiculous. One of the reasons I'm so grateful President Trump and Secretary Rubio are pushing hard, trying to get rid of the ICC and the ICJ, is because they have become rogue organizations that are no longer really about an equal application of law and justice.
I don't know enough about it to say if that's true or not. But I'm interested that you yourself appealed to international law as a basis of Israel's
Well, what I'm
legitimacy.
looking at is the whole of the last 100 years.
The Balfour Declaration is not exactly international law, by the way. It was a letter, I think.
It was maybe not law, but it was a declaration. It was an assumption and a declaration that was done by Lord Balfour in Great Britain. At that time, this land was under the British mandate, and he said the Jews should have the land that was theirs from 3,800 years ago. It was simple as that.
Right, and I'm not debating that. I'm just it was not international law. It was a colonial power saying, okay,
but then
here's how
later
we're going to divide up the world
law under the League of Nations, under the United Nations, and then because of the victories that Israel had against those who tried to annihilate them. And it wasn't just that they were trying to take a little piece of their land, they tried to annihilate them.
Okay.
And there is still to this day the shouts of from the river to the sea. And Tucker, that means only one thing.
Huckabee is trying to build this massive justification for legitimacy based on historical connection and international law. But watch what happens when Tucker pushes him on how those principles would actually work if you applied them fairly. Tucker brings up the fact that if having a long-term connection to land is the rule, then native Brits should have even more right to their land. Huckabee's response is telling. He basically says, well, there isn't a biblical connection for the Brits, and immediately tries to take that off the table. Let me pause right there. We're talking about a diplomat who just appealed to international law, but the second that law is applied to anyone else, he defaults back to a theological exception. That is a massive contradiction. Then he doubles down and brings up the Balfour Declaration as if it's a legal pillar, but Tucker catches him in that moment, and rightly so. He points out that it wasn't international law. It was a colonial power in the form of England, basically dividing up the world. Huckabee is appealing to international law when it suits his narrative, but the moment Tucker points out that Israel might be out of compliance with that same law, Huckabee calls those international organizations rogue and illegitimate. And here's what's so brilliant about what Tucker does. He exposes that Huckabee's argument isn't based on a consistent set of rules. It's contingent upon whatever justification, biblical, colonial, or legal, is most convenient in the moment. When you create a system where the rules only apply when they favor your side, you aren't being principled. You're just protecting your side of the argument.
Not the shrinking of Israel, but the annihilation of Israel.
I don't think
That's different.
I don't think you can say that you know what it means, actually, because you don't know what's in people's hearts. So why don't we just deal with the facts? Maybe some people mean it.
I know it's in their
that.
mouths. I know it's in their minds.
But I'm not, look, you'll never hear me say that. What you will hear me say is I'm confused by what the definitions are. So let's go through this. You've appealed to Genesis. Genesis 15 says it's Abram, it's pre-Abraham, it's Abram, receives from God the news that his descendants will inherit the land. And you tell me as the theologian if I'm getting this wrong, but from the Euphrates to the Nile. I think that's right. And that would include like basically the entire Middle East. That would be the Levant. So that would be Israel, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon. It would also be big parts of Saudi Arabia and Iraq. It would be, I mean,
I'm not sure it would go that far. I mean, it would be a big piece of land, but here's the point.
it would be a lot of places that are now countries. That
But this particular area that we're talking about now, Israel, is a land that God gave through Abraham to a people that he chose. It was a people, a place, and a purpose. We can look at it that way. Christian Zionism, I want to go back because that's where we started
I'm
on
not
this.
going to let you off on this because you have said
ahead.
it 3 times that God gave this land to this people. And so it is entirely fair for me with respect to ask, what land are you talking about? Because I just read Genesis 15, as I have many times. And that land, I think it says, from the Nile to the Euphrates, which is, once again, basically the entire Middle East. So God gave that land to his people, the Jews, or he didn't. You're saying he did. What does that mean? Does Israel have the right to that land? Because you're appealing to Genesis. You're saying that's the original deed.
It would be fine if they took it all. But I don't think that's what we're talking about here today.
What would be fine? Well, it's exactly what we're talking about today.
But here's what I don't think
you think it would be fine if the state of Israel took over all of Jordan?
They don't want to take it over. They're not asking to take it over.
But you're saying that the reason that Israel is legitimate, has this inherent right to exist, is in part because God gave it to his people. And I am going to the same Bible that you're referring to and noticing that that is a huge piece of land. So if God gave them that land, then they have a right to take it now by your definition, unless I'm missing something completely.
Well, I think you're missing something because they're not asking to go back to take all of that, but they are asking to at least take the land that they now occupy, they now live in, they now own legitimately, and it is a safe haven for them.
Well, but may I ask though, because you're explaining what Christian Zionism is and your theological beliefs. And you think you just said it would be fine with you if the state of Israel took all of Jordan, all of Syria, all of Lebanon.
That's really not exactly what I'm trying to say.
I'm asking,
Tucker.
Is that what you said? I thought that's what you just said.
It was somewhat of a hyperbolic statement in that, if that's what you feel like that we're talking about, but it isn't. We're talking about this land that Israel, the state of Israel, now lives in and wants to have peace in. They're not trying to take over Jordan. They're not trying to take over Syria. They're not trying to take over Iraq or anywhere else. But they do want to protect
Lebanon?
their people. No, they're not trying to take over Lebanon.
But you're saying that as a religious man, as a Christian Zionist, you agree with a lot of religious communities here in Israel that the justification for this country is theological. It's a contract between God and his people. And I'm telling you that contract includes a tract of land that is much larger than the current nation state.
So you may be a bigger Zionist than even the Jews are that live in Israel.
I'm trying to understand the implications of your theology for geopolitics, because you're saying that the present government of Israel has a moral right to take over what are now other people's countries.
No, I didn't say that, Tucker.
Then what are you saying?
I'm simply saying that the people who live in Israel, I think, have a right to have security, have safety. They have a right to be able to live in this land that they have a connection to for 38
I told myself, and I said a prayer that I would not get annoyed, but as someone who is, the father of daughters, when I see child molesters hiding in Israel and escaping American justice, I think I have a right to safety in my country too. So you can understand that I think most people feel they have a right to safety. I do think Israel has a right to safety, and I hope that for them, and I'm sincere. But I'm an American, and I have a right to safety in my country too.
Of course
Don't you
do.
agree? And I think so. But I just want to get to this point. If Israel were to say, God gave us in Genesis 15 all of Lebanon, all of Syria, all the way up to Iraq, would that be legitimate in your view?
I don't think in this particular day and time they're asking for it.
Would it be legitimate?
I'm not sure that it would be.
Why? Because you just said that God gave it to them.
Because I think that there is an understanding that the people of Israel today, now if they end up getting attacked by all these places and they win that war and they take that land, then okay, that's a whole nother discussion. But you and I...
Tucker gets blunt here, and Huckabee tries to dismiss the point as irrelevant to the current day of Israel. But let me tell you why Tucker's line of questioning is exactly right. When Tucker says, if God gave them that land, then they have a right to take it now by your definition, he's not being difficult. He's pointing out the actual logical conclusion of the theology Huckabee is arguing. It's pretty straightforward. Huckabee keeps saying they aren't asking for that land right now, or the Israelis have some sort of understanding, but he can't actually defend the core of his position. You cannot claim a nation has a divine deed to a land while simultaneously trying to ignore the literal boundaries written in that very deed in Genesis 5 that he wholeheartedly believes in. Then Huckabee finally admits what he really believes by saying if they end up getting attacked and they win that war, it would be fine if they took it all. So the quiet part is now loud. The divine right isn't just about history, it's an excuse for future expansion if the circumstances are right. Your moral support for a foreign nation becomes conditional on a theological contract that, if actually followed, would erase 5 other countries off the map. This is why these religious justifications for modern geopolitics are so dangerous. When you actually examine what they mean in practice, they create impossible situations for the real world. The people pushing these narratives know that. They want the religious cover because it allows them to avoid answering for the actual consequences of the policy. So, what do you guys think of this? Is Tucker right to push for the literal definition, or is Huckabee's hyperbolic defense enough for you? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.